Hello everyone, welcome to this video about violin technique. And if you're shocked because you think I'm going to switch from guitar videos to violin videos, don't worry, I'm going to stick to guitar, but for today it's a violin video and I will explain why, coming right up. So back in 2017, when I was just making videos here and there, I didn't have a direction for this channel, just made some videos when I felt like it. I did make 4 violin videos, not about jazz violin, but about violin technique. And I forgot all about those videos and I switched completely to guitar, even though I wanted to do jazz violin videos, but I discovered really quickly that there was no audience for it, or at least not comparable to guitar. So every time I made a jazz violin video, the view count really dropped quite dramatically and subscriber count dropped. So there's really no point in making jazz violin videos. It's just bad for my channel. But I was looking at those videos from 2017 because I got a comment on one of those videos. So I started replying, and then I noticed that that particular video had over 10,000 views. And then I watched the other 3, and combined they have almost 40,000 views, which is really shocking to me because first of all, I recorded those videos with a smartphone, an old smartphone, so the image quality is very bad. It's still better than television from the 90s, but compared to what you can do today, I'm just filming with a webcam. It's not even an expensive camera, but it's much better. And I'm rambling like crazy in those videos. Of course, there was no script. Well, that hasn't changed. I'm still rambling. That's just the way I make videos. And yeah, it's not the best videos I could think of, but people seem to really like it. And that is probably because of the topics I'm discussing. And I think the info in the videos is still good, but I wanted to make one new violin video in which I would address again my unorthodox technique. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I don't play with a shoulder rest, so without a shoulder rest, and that I have this really odd looking bow hold, right? And that is what is called, most people would call it a Russian bow hold, but I know that that name is debatable. There's many names for it. Apparently in Russia they call it a Hungarian bow hold. So I don't know what they call it in Hungary, but I'm gonna call it Russian bow hold because now we all know what we're talking about. So I made 4 videos, one about my about no shoulder rest, one about the bow hold, one about vibrato, and one about the problems I perceive in violin education today. So for this new video, I didn't want to rehash all of that information because the videos are still there. I will link them so you can watch those videos. They're very long, but I think the information is good. What I want to do today is just answer questions I got on that video, but also on Facebook, on Instagram. And not all questions because there's many questions and I can't even address all the questions I collected for this video, but maybe I'll do another one in a while. But address those questions or answer those questions, and then I can talk more about the technique when it's relevant. Now, before I do that, of course, I wanted to stress that all the opinions and everything I say in this video, it's purely my opinion, right? One guy's opinion. It's not the truth. In fact, it might be very far from the truth, but it's just the way I experience playing the violin for many years, both in jazz, bluegrass, pop music, also classical, but that was a long time ago. I haven't played classical in I don't know how many years. Sometimes I play. I'm on a what you call that, a substitute list for symphonies when they can't find anyone. They might call me. So that to that extent, I sometimes play classical, but I never practice classical music or even really listen to it. It's really all jazz. But still, the technique of playing the violin is more or less the same, right? So let's start with the questions. Um, okay, here we go. So first question is, do you raise your shoulder for shifting down? So this person is asking me if because I play without shoulder rest, that if I shift down, right, if I'm say I'm in a high position, I want to shift down, the danger is that because I'm supporting the violin with my arm, that I pull the violin away from my chin, right? With the shoulder rest, you can clench down, and then you can hold the violin at the right place. But if you don't have shoulder rest, you can, or you will actually pull the violin from under your chin. So he's asking me if I raise my shoulder to still be able to hold the violin. Well, I never raise my shoulder. And also there's no point, because my violin is not on my shoulder, and I can show that. So it's on my collarbone, right? So my collarbone is here. It is there, and my shoulder is completely free. There's nothing over there, so I can raise it what I want. It won't help me. So what I do to avoid putting the violin under my chin is I would move my thumb first. So when I'm in third position, maybe you can see like this, and I want to shift back to first position, I don't, so now I have to hold, I don't do this. No, what I do is I move my thumb first, and then I move my finger. So there's always support for the violin. There's never not supported. So of course I do this now unconsciously, but in the beginning you have to maybe work on it to first move your thumb, then your fingers. And then you don't have to raise your shoulder. You will just have the support you need in order not to pull the violin away from you. Okay. I'm having trouble with bowing, mainly getting a nice full sound and isolating the right string I'm trying to play. Do you have any good exercises that would help? Okay, well, this is a typical beginner problem. It's two questions. It's how to get a full sound and how to play on the right string, right? Because if you look at the violin and you see those four strings, in the beginning it might seem impossible to only play on one string and not accidentally hit another string. Now, to solve that, I think the best way is to just practice scales. And I know in my guitar videos, I always say never practice scales. But for technique, especially in violin, scales are great for a lot of things. For getting your bow on the right string, for intonation, lots of stuff. So if you play a scale, so let me play, I'll just play a G major scale in the first position. I would just play it very slowly, maybe even with a metronome, and look at the contact point of my bow with the string. Just look at it. Are you hitting two strings? Okay, then tilt the bow until you're not hitting two strings. Make a mental note, okay, this is the angle of the bow I should have to play on the G string. And when you go to the D string for the scale, do the same thing, just look at it. And make a mental note on when you are playing only one string. So the exercise would be something like this. And I will sometimes make a mistake on purpose where I play two strings. Yeah, so when I play violin, I have to move the microphone back because the violin is so much louder than my voice. Like that. It's very difficult for me to fake playing two strings because I would never do that. I would never play two strings, but that's because I worked on it with scales. Okay, and then how to get a nice full sound? Well, that is, of course, the main question, and that is very difficult to just answer like this. But I can give you the components. So the components of getting a nice full sound is that you make good string contact with the bow, and that you play in tune. Because if you play in tune on the violin, the instrument will start to resonate. Other strings will start to sound, will start ringing. You will feel kind of resonance in the wood. It's very difficult to precisely explain, but you will feel the instrument come alive when you play in tune. For instance, I don't have an expensive violin, right? It might look very nice, but this is a Chinese violin. by a brand called Alessandro, and I think you can buy it for $1,500, which is nothing for a violin. Right? It's really nothing. This is the instrument I use for everything. I play, I do recordings with it, I do concerts. For me, it doesn't really matter which violin I have, as long as as long as it's good in the sense that there's no real build errors in it. It doesn't really matter what the violin is. I pretty much get the same sound on every instrument. So I find it more important which strings, for instance. So I'll talk about the strings later. So, but when you practice a scale, again, you can work on intonation by comparing notes to open strings. So let's say I play a C string, a C scale. When I play a D, I would compare it to the open string. And when I play E, I would compare it to the open strings to see if I play in tune. Right? So it would look something like this. So it was a little bit too high, so I would improve it. This B you can play with the G string as a major third. With the harmonic, the A. Harmonic. Of course, I wouldn't go back that quickly. I would, again, do the same thing on the way back, very slowly until you get everything more or less in tune, right? It's never possible to get everything perfectly in tune. That's not the point. You want to get it as much in tune as possible. And then after you've done that, play the scale up and down without stopping. And then take another scale in maybe a flat key like E flat or B flat and do the same thing. And do this every day. Every day play 2 scales, focusing on playing in tune, and that will go a long way towards having a good full sound. Now about the bow contact, you want to have so this is the way I do it, right? I have this Russian bow hold. Again, watch the video about what it is. I like to have the bow tilted. I don't want to play with all the hairs. That is my personal preference. And I don't have the bow really tightly wound, right? It is it's not loose, but it's certainly not a big gap between the hair and the wood. And then I make sure to only move my forearm, because that's the thing when you do a Russian bow hold. You only move your forearm and make sure you have bow contact all the way through the bowing. And then again, do it with a scale. Maybe first do the tuning, then do bow contact, right? Only focus on one thing at a time. If you do this every day with 2 scales, it's going to take you maybe 10 minutes every day. Your sound will improve. I promise. Okay, next question. Awesome technique and big thick sound. Thanks for posting. By the way, what strings are those? Okay, well, thank you so much. I don't know who said it again, but so the strings I find very important, maybe more important than the violin for me. So these strings are Larsen Il Cannone. So they say that they try to get an old-fashioned sound in those strings. And for some reason, I feel that they succeeded. Probably it's all my head, but when I compare them to other strings I've used, I can get more of my sound on these strings. I can get them on other strings, but these strings are my favorite strings. All 4 of them, just Larsen Il Cannone solo strings. I will put a link in the description. The question I have for you is, when holding the violin up with the left hand, or actually with the left arm, right? Do you tend to cradle the neck completely in the V made by your hand, or is there a gap under the violin neck between your V made by your thumb and first finger? Okay, let me see. Yeah, So there, I feel now there's a gap. So he's asking me if I, or he or she is asking me if I have. Can you see it? Or what's a good angle? I don't know. It's very difficult to do the angle, but he's asking me if. So I can show it like this. Yeah. If my I don't know what this part is called, but if the neck of the violin is touching the skin here, or if there is a hole in between, and there is a hole. Can you see that? Very difficult to angle it. But actually there's a hole. So I'm holding the violin between this part of my finger and so between this part of my thumb and this part of my finger. So the second, I don't know what you call it in English. The second crease there and the crease in my thumb. I'm holding the violin in between there. Not a tight grip, just it's kind of, I don't know, as loose as possible without dropping the violin down like this. Of course, that's when I play without vibrato. When I have vibrato, then actually I let go of this contact point here. So watch my video on vibrato to see the contact points for vibrato, but it is different. Do you play without chin rest too? What are your thoughts on that? Okay. I get that question a lot because I play without shoulder rest, so people assume that maybe I also would like to try without chin rest, and I've done that just to try it. But the thing is, I play with heavy vibrato, and if you play with heavy vibrato, I need a chin rest. Let's keep it to myself. I need a chin rest because the violin will otherwise move too much like this. It's already moving when I play, and I don't mind that. But if I don't have a chin rest, if I don't have something to stop the violin, and of course you could do that without a chin rest, but I feel that the chin rest is really helping me not having this kind of motion too much, right? Because when I play with vibrato, you can see the violin shake. Sorry, I'm not a classical violin player. It just popped in my mind. But so you can see the violin shake. So I need the chin rest for the support. Next question. Please make a video on holding the violin, as we have all been taught nonsense such as no dive bombing, where the scroll is pointing towards the ground. Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, I really don't care about which way the violin is pointing, or down, or my violin is always pointing down. It's just more relaxed for me. I can move it up, and sometimes I do that, right? When I have to shift up behind the violin, so gravity will help, but on average it's pointing down. It's just the most relaxed. I care more about feeling relaxed than any of the dogmas that might exist about which way the violin should point. Even though maybe it is true that when you do it like this, it sounds a little bit better. But if that puts strain on your arm, then I would say don't do it. So, and if you look at people like Milstein, his violin is dropping is pointing to the ground also. So, I still don't get how to vibrato without the shoulder rest. It's hard to do vibrato. Yeah, well, vibrato is the hardest thing to do on the violin, no doubt. It is just the most difficult thing to get, not only technically, but also to get the sound in your head that you want to use when playing, right? I made a video about vibrato. I would watch it if you're interested in it, because I talk about all different kinds of vibratos and amplitude and speed and how to combine it. But you can work on your vibrato, but then use it in such a way that it's effective is very difficult. And it is the one thing that will elevate your sound from good to soloist. It's the vibrato. It's not the speed of the notes, and if you can play double stops very fast. I mean, that's all great. That's all technical trickery. But it's that sound with the vibrato is what will make the difference. And it's the thing I work really hard on. Vibrato is something that I always say it will take 2 years to develop to something that is usable. And it depends a little bit on what kind of vibrato you want to use. So I use wrist vibrato, which is the more difficult of the two. But if you play without shoulder rest, you kind of have to do wrist vibrato. Arm vibrato, it's much quicker to develop. But I also feel it's more one-dimensional. It's more one kind of thing, one kind of sound. With wrist vibrato, there's more of a personal touch. Well, that's how I feel about it. So one way, I can give you a quick exercise to practice vibrato. So just take a metronome. And put it on, let's say 100. Maybe you want to do 80, but let's do 100 for this demo. And then, so let's do a vibrato on a B flat. So what you're going to do is you're going to do quarter notes vibrato like this. So I put my finger flat to round every beat. Making sure that I only move my wrist if you do wrist vibrato. Of course, if you do arm vibrato, you have to make sure that your wrist is locked and move your arm. I would advise against it for my reasons. See my vibrato video, but if you want to do arm vibrato, it's the same. It has to sound the same, but then the technique is different. You do it for a while, then you switch to quarter triplets. So da do gi ga gi do. Then you do eighth notes. Then you do triplets. Then you do 16. So let me do that with the metronome. Quarter notes. Quarter triplets. Eighth notes. Triplets. Sixteenth notes. You want to make it as rhythmically accurate as possible. The tabo, yabo, da. It's pretty difficult to do. And then you move the metronome up. Once you reach 120, it's going to be very difficult to do the 16th because you will lose control of it being that precise. But that's not the point. At one point, it will start to sound like vibrato, right? You start here. Oh, it's not probably too loud with the microphone there. And but that will take a while. Let's say 2 years. And I know there's people even in my comments say, "Oh, I learned it in a week." Really, I want to hear it, because to get world-class vibrato in a week, then there's some kind of secret that I don't know. I would really love to know that so that I could teach to other people. Yeah, but vibrato, very difficult. Most important thing to master, I think, if you want to sound like a soloist, a classical soloist, but also if you play gypsy jazz like me, you need that kind of vibrato. Need it. It's good if you have that kind of vibrato. It is a vibrato that Corpelli was using a lot, especially on slower songs. Okay, next one. Am I right in thinking that folk players tend to play like this more so than players of other genres? So he's talking about no soloist. Actually, no. The only people that I encounter that play without soloist are usually in classical music. It's very rare, right? It's very rare. But if I meet them, they're usually in classical music. in bluegrass circles, they use huge solo rests. I've seen people with really like big solo rests, and in jazz, most people that I know have a solo rest. But I want to say there's nothing wrong with the solo rest, right? There's plenty of superb players much better than me, that use a solo rest. The reason to not use a solo rest is not that you will play better. It's because it's more relaxing and it's more fun. I explain all of that in that video about no solo rests, but it's just more fun to play without it, and pain-free. There's no more pain. Does your collarbone ever hurt? Because, of course, my violin's on my collarbone. Well, no, not anymore, but I guess it might have hurt at the beginning, just because you're pressing something on it all the time. So you will see there is a mark, but I don't feel anything. It's kind of numb, right? It's like a callus has developed there, right? So yeah, it might hurt in the beginning, but it's not a muscle ache or a joint ache, right? Something really bad. It's probably because you're pressing something there, or pressing because you're resting something on it. That will probably go away. It went away for me. So actually, I can't even remember that I ever had it. What about the position of the thumb, Christian? As I see it, it seems that you don't have specific C shape. No, right? He's talking about like this position. My thumb is kind of going all over the place. I'd say for that, I would do what feels good. I think there's no rule for it. Especially if you play without the shoulder rest and your violin is not locked in one place, then as long as you feel comfortable, then you can do whatever with your thumb. It can point any way. And in fact, if you look in at top players right now, there's all kinds of variations. I mean, Itzhak Perelman's thumb is a lot like my thumb. Enes has his thumb really far over the neck like this. So I say, as long as your thumb is next to the violin, when you play without shoulder rest, you kind of have to do it. Putting your thumb under it, it's kind of limits what you can do with vibrato a lot. So I know some people think they need thumb on the violin, but I would always recommend, if you play without shoulder rest, to put your thumb next to the violin. What feels the very best for me to play with no... Oh yeah, this is a funny comment I put. It's on my video about no shoulder rest, and somebody commented that they also use no chin rest, and this guy answered, very nice. What feels the very best for me is to play with no chin rest, shoulder rest, and no violin as well. I just feel so free. Very funny. Okay. A virtuoso violinist taught me to change my bowhold from Franco-Belgian to Russian. He told me it brings greater sound. Also because it uses all the bow hair and is kept flat on the strings. Is that not true? Yes, I think that's not true. I think you can get a great sound with any bowhold. Franco-Belgian, Russian, Galamian, whatever, right? That's not the point to change the bowholds, because it brings a greater sound. I think if you want to change to Russian, you should do it because it's just easier. The mechanics are easier, and please watch that video on the Russian bowhold. I explain the mechanics all very clearly. It's just because it's easier. That's the reason to change, not because it brings a better sound. And about the flat bow hairs, well, yeah, you could do that probably, but for me, I like to bow tilted. It just, for me, brings a more subtle, less aggressive, more sweet sound. And that's what I'm looking for. So those were all the questions I collected for today. And maybe I'll do another video with more questions. If you have questions for me, please put them in the comments, and I'll answer them in a video somewhere in the future. For all the guitar players that are still watching, I don't know why, but thank you so much. Maybe you find it interesting. I will make a video about guitar technique soon also. Some updated thoughts, some exercises. And I will see all of you in that video. If you're a violin player thinking about improvisation, you can also check out my guitar videos. There's probably stuff in there that you could use as well. See you in the next video. Bye!